Chapter 261 to 266. Are you finally going to make a move on Kirigakure? Thought Zetsu with a strange smile. While Uchiha Madara was still alive, he secretly began to attach strings to Kirigakure. As such, many of the high-ranking shinobi of Kirigakure became a puppet in Madara's hands without them even realizing it. This is also the reason why Uchiha Madara was able to kidnap Noara Rin under the guise of this being Kirigakure's doing, sealed Sanbai inside her, and also branded her with the forbidden individual curse tag, leaving her with no other choice but to kill herself at the hands of Kakashi so that Kirigakure's plan doesn't come to fruition. Aside from all the planning hidden behind Noara Rin's death, there were two reasons why Madara selected Kirigakure to control from the shadows. The first reason was their war potential. Kirigakure's overall strength was second only to Konoha because of all the shinobi clans with strong Kekii Genkai living in the Land of Water, which included Yuki clan with Ice Release, Kagaya clan with Corpse Bone Vein, Terumi clan with Lava Release and Boil Release, Hashigate clan, Karatachi clan, Hozuki clan, and so on. The second reason is the location of Kirigakure. The Land of Water is located at the edge of the mainland, with the only mode of transportation to the continent being through the sea, so the flow of information outside was very limited. And Madara's control over Kirigakure is also one of the many reasons for Kirigakure's instability and internal conflicts. Madara's death and the rise of Karatachi Yagura to the position of the Yondaime Mizukage has gradually started to change Kirigakure for the better. The policies advocated by the new Mizukage have started to calm the internal strife within the Land of Water, and there are signs that Kirigakure would soon rise. So if the Yondaime Mizukage is allowed to continue his rule over Kirigakure, then all the efforts Uchiha Madara put to control Kirigakure from the shadows would amount to nothing. As such, Zetsu also wants the masked man to again take control of Kirigakure. The guards following Mizukage are two elite Umbu, said Zetsu. The masked thought a little and said, in that case, we will take control of Mizukage, inform Nagato and Konan to meet me in the Land of Water, and there we will ambush Mizukage, effectively controlling over the entire Kirigakure from the shadows. Karatachi Yagura is indeed strong. With his own strength he managed to reach a degree of consensus with the Sanbai sealed inside him, as such his strength is obviously nothing to scoff at. Although the masked man is sure that he can easily deal with the Mizukage very easily because of his Manjikyu Sharingan and would release, having Pain and Konan will only make it much easier to take control of Mizukage. Zetsu said as he submerged into the ground, alright, I will inform Nagato and Konan to meet you in the Land of Water in about 2 weeks from today. The masked man also disappeared into the spiraling whirl, closely following the soon-to-be puppet Mizukage. A week later, Hyuga Kuroto's home. Poof. With a poof of white smoke, the tiger-striped orange cat appeared before Kuroto. As soon as the cat appeared before, she asked for 1,000 ryo as usual, and after Kuroto gave the 1,000 ryo bill, the cat passed a scroll to Kuroto and left into a poof of white smoke. Kuroto unfolded the scroll and read the information on it, and muttered, at the end of next month, there is going to be a celestial phenomenon which would lead to the occurrence of aurora lights, and Hirako plans to use that opportunity to complete the ritual. Kuroto deduced this based on the intelligence that Shinichi sent him. Currently it is the second week of this month, which means that the ritual will take place about 6 weeks from now. When Kuroto thought of the fact that 6 weeks from now Hirako will be performing the ritual to absorb the 5 Kekii Genkai, the sense of urgency in Kuroto's mind increased. This is because he wants to go to the scene and personally observe the entire ceremony in full detail. But the problem is that the entire Akatsuki will also be present there, since Pain had arranged the members of Akatsuki to help gather the Kekii Genkai. Therefore it is obvious that they will ensure his safety during the ritual process, so it is obvious that Kuroto can't be present there so openly. How should I sneak there? As Kuroto thought of this issue, he suddenly got an idea. A month later. In this period of a month, Kuroto put a lot of his time to train the female fire nature clone. Although the time he spent training this clone has been very short, its effects were still very visible. It is probably because of the fact that Kuroto already has experience of cultivating the clones, so he did not face any active problems. However, there are some passive problems, one of which is the chakra natures of this clone body. Because of the Shirsui's genes present in the clone, the chakra natures of this clone body are fire, lightning, and yin. Fire release and yin release are obviously the primary chakra natures, while lightning release is the secondary chakra nature. And as far as Kuroto knows, there doesn't seem to be any Kekii Genkai in the shinobi world that is a fusion of fire release and lightning release. The only thing that even comes close to being a possibility of being a fusion of fire release and lightning release is Uchiha Sasuke's blaze release, but Kuroto knows that blaze release developed by Uchiha Sasuke is Amaterasu molded into different forms under the control of Sasuke's Kagetsuchi. As such, there is really no Kekii Genkai with fire and lightning being its elementary chakra natures. Therefore, if Kuroto wants to attain his objective of cultivating this female clone up to the standards for being used in the ritual, then Kuroto has to develop an all-new Kekii Genkai that has never appeared in the shinobi world before. This is obviously not an easy task, but he has no other choice but to do so. After completing a day of training, Kuroto came to his laboratory. Looking at Uchiha Ryota on the test bench, his eyes grew colder. Right now, the two pairs of eyeballs in each eye socket have started to return into a normal shape, but they are far from being merged completely as there are still two pupils clearly visible in each eye socket. This indicated that the two pairs have yet to integrate successfully. And here lies the problem, it has already been almost 2 months since the fusion process started, but it is still far from being completed, and this is making Kuroto very annoyed. Considering his plans, Kuroto decided that he can't take it anymore and said coldly, "Stop pretending to be unconscious, Uchiha Ryota. I have not injected any drug inside of you for the past month, and the fact that you are conscious is not hidden from my eyes." It was a few days ago that Kuroto decided to stop injecting the drugs into Ryota's body so that the speed of fusion of the two pairs increases, and it is obvious that Ryota's consciousness was restored because of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan fusion. Initially, Kuroto did not point it out because there is no threat from Ryota anymore. His whole body is sealed from inside and out, as such he can't even blink his eyes without alerting Kuroto. And because there is a need for a host whose will would guide the fusion of two Manjikyu pairs, so Kuroto chose to remain silent and let Ryota do the work that he is supposed to do. After all, that's all he is useful for anyways. But Ryota, who was detained, tortured, and almost killed by Kuroto, has yet not learned the lesson, let alone speeding up the fusion of two pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan. He even put his effort to deliberately slow down the already slow fusion process, which has only increased Kuroto's dilemma, greatly annoying him. Exposed by Kuroto, Ryota grinned weakly and flapped his lips speaking something, but no voice came out. Although Ryota couldn't perfectly control his muscles to grin or speak, Kuroto noticed that it was a mocking grin and also understood what he was trying to speak because of his training in lip reading. "Sure enough, I can't hide from you, but what is with your voice? Why do you sound like a woman?" Kuroto didn't bother to answer Ryota's question about why his voice sounds like a woman, and asked instead, "Why are you trying to prevent the fusion of two Manjikyu Sharingan into eternal Manjikyu Sharingan?" Ryota again flapped his lips. "Why? Because it's fun. Annoying is fun. Without my will to be a guide to the fusion process to the two pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan, you will never get the completely integrated eternal Manjikyu Sharingan." Kuroto frowned. "Don't waste your meaningless effort. First and foremost, the two pairs will integrate regardless of what you try. All your futile attempts to stop the process will slow it down and nothing more, so your efforts are worthless in the end. And you seem to be confused about some things. You are not the only Uchiha. There is Hideki in one of my other secret labs, then there is Shursui. Moreover, your attempts to annoy me will only increase your suffering before your inevitable death. Are you so hell-bent on suffering more?" But it seemed that Ryota didn't care. "You can try whatever you want, but as long as these eyeballs are in my eye sockets, I am going to do everything to stop their integration." Kuroto was silent for a moment and then asked curiously, "Since you chose to communicate with me, it means that you still have something that you want from me, right? Come on, tell me, what is it that you want?" When asked by Kuroto, Ryota suddenly went silent and finally spoke, "I want to have a final fight with you, using all the power that an Uchiha can have, that is with the power of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan." To be honest, Kuroto doesn't really know what the true limits of Susanoo can be. The full-body Susanoo used by Uchiha Madara in the Fourth Great Shinobi War was more than capable of cutting mountains with just pure wind pressure generated by waving his swords. While the Susanoo used by Rikudo Sennin was as big as the Jubi itself, so there is no telling on what exactly is the limit of Susanoo. The reason Kuroto agreed to this request of Ryota is also related to one of his interests, as Kuroto is really interested in seeing the full extent of the power of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that Ryota, the original owner of the dojutsu, can display. Collecting this data is obviously important and can be used as a point of reference. From the size, Ryota's full-body Susanoo can be compared to the like of the one displayed by Madara and Indra, but Kuroto still believes that maintaining such a high chakra-consuming Susanoo would be extremely burdensome for Ryota. After all, Ryota does not have the exaggerated chakra level of the two sons of Rikudo Sennin, and there is also a probability that Okinanoshi is no longer accessible to him, so meeting chakra requirements is extremely difficult for him. However, despite all this, there is still a sense of heavy oppression oozing off of the Susanoo's body, and Kuroto can be sure that even the likes of Kage-class shinobi would have trouble bearing such heavy pressure. At this time, Ryota spoke, "Hyuga Kuroto, I feel that I am omnipotent and almighty now, come. For I am going to enjoy this last battle of mine. If you defeat the current me, then I wouldn't feel wronged even after everything that you put me and my brother through. Whoosh. In an instant, the cyan blue chakra flames wrapped around Kuroto's whole body, as his eyes changed from Byakugan to Tenseigan. Looking at those cyan eyes, Ryota instinctively felt the power they seemed to contain, and he can't help but shudder upon realizing this. Taking a deep breath, Ryota calmed himself and asked Kuroto, "Those are your evolved eyes?" Kuroto did not bother to answer, he just raised his hand gently. Instantly, one after another, truth-seeking balls appeared behind Kuroto's back and their number reached a total of 5. Staring at those black orbs, Ryota was reminded of just how much of a cheat they are, and he can't help but remember that final technique that Hyuga Kuroto used which completely decimated his Susanoo. I have to be the one to make the first move, thought Ryota. Instantly, Ryota's Susanoo flew up high into the sky and the 4 long swords made out of golden flames appeared lengthened. Immediately afterward, he started the flurry of attacks with the 4 swords at the same time, waving them with such might that each sword left hundreds of meters of a gully on the ground. Compared with the huge figure of the Susanoo, Kuroto's figure was akin to an ant. But that very same ant-like figure was not at all scared by the incoming sword strikes and in fact, had a total indifferent look on his face when met with the 4 swords. Suddenly his figure disappeared from his position, and passed through the small gaps between the 4 swords like a high-speed cyan streamer, rushing towards the Susanoo. Boom! The 4 giant chakra swords that failed to cut Kuroto, slashed the mountain below into several pieces, and splashed the entire battlefield with hot golden flames, encasing everything into a sea of flames that even melted the ground. But completely unaffected by this attack, Kuroto who was rushing towards the Susanoo increased his speed as he simultaneously controlled the truth-seeking ball and injected Tenseigan chakra into them. Kuroto doesn't want to have a very long and dragged-out battle with Ryota, so he opted to directly use the strongest technique in his arsenal to deal with Ryota in the shortest amount of time possible. The advantage of truth-seeking ball is obvious, and Kuroto plans to perfectly utilize this advantage in this battle. Ryota also noticed the chakra fluctuations emitting out of Kuroto and understood that he has to do something to block Kuroto. He waved the chakra swords, slashing towards Kuroto, with the intent to cut him as soon as he can, but he was unable to do so. The reason is also very simple, this is only the second time Ryota is using Manjikyu Sharingan or Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, coupled with how fast Kuroto is dodging all those attacks, it is obvious that Ryota can't keep up with that speed even with the heightened insight and visual acuity. As Kuroto was about to approach the Susanoo, suddenly a 100-meter-long sword made up of golden chakra appeared in Kuroto's hands, and that very instant, the speed of Kuroto accelerated 3 times to his previous speed. Ryota was obviously unable to react to the sudden increase in Kuroto's speed, however, he still tried to clutch Kuroto's figure into a hand grip with 2 of Susanoo's hands. But that was obviously useless as before the arms could approach him, Kuroto waved a 100 meters long golden sword. Slash! The golden chakra sword easily cut through both the arms, as if the entire defense of Susanoo amounted to nothing. Ryota was obviously shocked. How? He didn't even have any words to express his shocked state. Even after he had overestimated the power that the sword contained, Ryota couldn't believe that with a single swipe a pair of arms encased with Susanoo's armor, further strengthened by his Yaoyorozu will be cleaved off as if they were nothing. Is the difference so big? Ryota. Seems like I will have to add more orbs to cut the chest part in just one slash. Kuroto. At this time, the 2 hands that were cut off separated from the Susanoo and fell to the ground. Meanwhile, Kuroto, whose speed was slowed a bit, swayed from left to right, as 2 more truth-seeking balls appeared on his left hand, which Kuroto merged into the golden sword. Suddenly, the extremely strong golden sword became sharper, and dazzling that for a moment Ryota had to cover his eyes as he couldn't directly look at the golden sword. Kuroto was slightly surprised upon learning what Ryota wants from him, and immediately arched his lips in a grin. Given the state you are in, and after understanding what I put you through, do you still think that you have the qualifications to put such terms before me? Ryota, whether I am qualified or not, you should know this even better than I do, but it does not matter. What I spoke to you is what I want. My death is inevitable, even I know that, even if you don't kill me, I don't have much longer to live, and this fact can't be changed. And the same is the case with my brother, so fighting you using the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, for which you made us suffer so much, is what I want. I want to experience the epitome of power that an Uchiha can have. This time Kuroto was silent. The Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan indeed represents the epitome of power that an Uchiha can have from the Yin part of Rikudo Sennin's power. It is also the embodiment of the peak spiritual power from the lineage of Rikudo Sennin. Therefore, Ryota's desire to experience this power before his inevitable death is not so strange, if one thinks about it. And to be honest, Kuroto would rather have Ryota complete the fusion of the two pairs because that would yield the best Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan pair at the current time. Besides, now that the fusion process has started, Ryota's will has already merged with the eyes, so Ryota's will is important for the fusion. Kuroto knows this very well because he has also awakened the Tenseigan. While Kuroto was busy thinking, Ryota continued flapping his lips. You said that you noticed me gaining consciousness, yet why did you not do anything about it? Was it because you knew that I am powerless to do anything? Or is it because there are some differences when I am the host or when someone else is the host? I don't care what are those differences, what I care about is what I want, so either you agree to what I want, or you can keep waiting. Kuroto said, do you really think that you will be able to defeat me with the power of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan? Because if you do, then I am sorry to have to tell you that, it wouldn't make any difference, you will lose, miserably at that. Ryota said, I don't care, you said that Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan represents the epitome of power that an Uchiha can ever have. I refuse to die without experiencing this power, regardless of the result, whether I win or lose, I must. There is no whether you lose or win. You will lose, and you can't change that result. Kuroto continued after the pause, and how am I supposed to trust you that you will not use this opportunity to destroy your eyes? Ryota said, you do not need to pretend, I already know that you have planted a curse tag in my heart, it prevents me from killing myself and also prevents me from destroying these eyes. Kuroto was a little surprised that Ryota was able to perceive the curse tag, but when he thought about it, it didn't seem strange. Oh? You noticed? Ryota continued. Obviously. Since there is already a cursed tag placed in my heart, so obviously I can't destroy the eyes, so you have no reason to be worried about. Kuroto thought a little, and after weighing it a little, he finally nodded, alright then, since you are so hell-bent on suffering another defeat, I will just let you experience it. 1 week later, somewhere in the land of tea, Uchiha Ryota finally tore off the antibacterial covering that was wrapped over his eyes, and finally opened his eyes. At this time, an extremely complex scarlet and black pattern appeared in his eye sockets, which comprised of a 5-pointed star, as well as several tomo shapes within the Manjikyu copy wheel. After adapting to the change in light, Ryota muttered with emotion, so this is what Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan feels like. Not far away stood Kuroto. He was calmly observing Uchiha Ryota, who has torn off the antibacterial cloth and revealed the pair of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. At this time, Ryota's eyes landed on Kuroto. Ryota spoke, can I ask you a few questions? Kuroto nodded, ask. Ryota spoke, who was the person I killed back when I tried escaping from the prison cell I was locked in? It wasn't a shadow clone, it was you, right? Then how are you still alive? Kuroto indifferently answered, true, that was not a shadow clone, but it was a clone created from my genes. Is that so? Muttered Ryota and then asked again, and why did your voice sound like that of a woman that time, was it also because? Before Ryota could complete his sentence, Kuroto nodded, yes, that was also a clone of mine. Ryota nodded, he didn't really care about all this. He carefully observed the pair of Byakugan in Kuroto's eye sockets, and asked, one more question, how come you, a Hyuga, have such power and so many weird techniques? As far as it is known, Byakugan does not grant its user access to such abilities, then how are you? Kuroto was silent for a while, and then said, if the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan can evolve into Manjikyu Sharingan and Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, then why can Byakugan of the Hyuga clan not evolve into a higher form of dojitsu? After all, both Sharingan and Byakugan are branches of the same tree. Ryota nodded, huh? Then asked with a frown, but what do you mean by branches of the same tree? Kuroto shook his head indifferently, you don't need to care about that, enough questions already, we can start whenever you are ready. Ryota no longer asked anything and rushed towards Kuroto as he spoke with a grin, it's fine even if you don't want to answer, let me once experience the true power of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, I don't believe that the Uchiha clan is any inferior to the Hyuga clan. As he rushed towards Kuroto, the golden phantom started to emerge out of his body. Ryota obviously did not start any tentative attacks, he already understands just how monstrous Hyuga Kuroto's strength is, so no need to start with simple attacks, as such he directly used the chakra and activated the Susanoo. Voila! Layer after layer staggered over the Susanoo, and within a few moments, the huge golden Susanoo appeared on the battlefield. The shape of the Susanoo was not much different, but its size was considerably larger than the one Ryota used previously, reaching up to an astonishing titanic size. even a single of its movement produced large wind pressures. Even Kuroto was a bit surprised as he stared at the humongous Susanoo in front of him. Uchiha Ryota stood in the diamond cavity of the full-body Susanoo as an additional cloak of golden flames covered the humongous body of the Susanoo. Even Kuroto had to take this fight a bit seriously. The sudden dazzling light that illuminated the sky with a golden glow prompted Ryota to raise his only hand to cover his eyes. At this time, the two hands that have fallen on the ground exploded, further splashing flames everywhere. The sound of the explosion was obviously very loud, and it still lingered within Ryota's ear. After forcefully adapting to the golden bright light, Ryota suddenly realized that the golden sword that Kuroto carried was longer than before, and it had already penetrated the chest part of the Susanoo armor. Two cleaved-off hands and the chest pierced by the sword reminded Ryota of that night, and he was instantly angrier when he saw this. After getting the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, the epitome of power that an Uchiha can have, Ryota knows that he stands at the pinnacle of the Uchiha clan, at the same level of Uchiha Madara, and yet he is so helpless in the face of Hyuga Kuroto. Even if he knows that his defeat is inevitable, he doesn't want to be so helpless. Ah! With a roar, Ryota urged his Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan with all his power, such that bloody veins became apparent on the white Scara, but he didn't care and continued putting more and more chakra, squeezing out every bit and fragment. His body started to suddenly age, yet he did not care. What he cared now was to not die miserably. Followed by Ryota's roar, and the instantaneous burst of chakra, the golden flames that were encasing the Susanoo armor with a protective cloak sizzled and grew violent, raging uncontrollably. It grew and its form changed. The empty spots from where the arm was cleaved off were now covered with the golden flames that took the shapes of two giant hands of the Susanoo armor. And it seems that Ryota was not finished with this. His roar continued, and the golden flames even covered the empty interior of the Susanoo armor. Now the giant Susanoo was a golden flame giant, and when Kuroto saw such a change, his face sank. Although not as strong as Uchiha Sasuke's Indra Susanoo, this Susanoo was only a step or two away from reaching such high power. All that Ryota lacked to be able to match that level of power was the amount of chakra. But Kuroto knew that even if this Susanoo is not as exaggeratedly strong as Uchiha Sasuke's Indra Susanoo, he still can't be careless with it. This is because he is more than familiar with the characteristics of the golden flame. Kuroto has already done experiments with this golden flame and understands this very well, that aside from being very hot and violent, the golden flames, which is actually a special ability of Ryota's Manjikyu Sharingan, aside from the two dojutsu abilities, these golden flames seems to be able to burn the chakra itself. Which is to say, once pure chakra comes in contact with these golden flames, these flames violently react and engulf that source itself. As a result, the chakra source will be instantly consumed, which is extremely dangerous. Not wanting to take the risk of getting touched by those flames, Kuroto instantly dispelled the golden sword, then collected all the truth-seeking balls in his right hand, to which he further injected the Tenseigan chakra and then shouted, "Silver will reincarnation explosion." Instantly, an extremely violent silver storm spewed out of Kuroto's hand. The raging winds of the violent silver hurricane filled the interior of Ryota's Susanoo in just a short time and blew away the golden flames. But, damn it. Even Ryota, who was standing in the diamond cavity on the forehead of the Susanoo, was blown away by the hurricane and its wings were ridden with holes at this moment. Boom! The huge Susanoo that could no longer stay in the sky lost control and fell on the sea past the mountain cliff. As the huge body of Susanoo fell into the sea, it set off a huge wave, and the wave swept past the mountainous coast. Fortunately enough, there was no house near the coast. The reason why Kuroto chose the Land of Tea as a battlefield because he knows that the Land of Tea is pretty isolated and the chances of people of Shinobi interfering with the fight will be extremely less, so Kuroto would not have to worry about being discovered by anyone. Gurgle. Gurgle. With the Susanoo falling into the sea, the water poured into the hole, and soon enough the entire Susanoo was seemingly submerged into the sea. Even the golden flames that were again lit because of Ryota's chakra, although did not extinguish, were still weakened. On Kuroto's side, because of the Tenseigan, his vision was not at all hindered by all the rising steam that was starting to cover the battlefield along with the dust and smoke. Seeing that the Susanoo was starting to submerge into the water, Kuroto stopped the silver tornado and again drew his right hand as the gold sword re-emerged in his hand. And without even waiting for a second to pass, Kuroto waved the sword. Whoosh! The bright golden chakra sword drew a shining arc, leaving a conspicuous halo wherever it passed and cut off everything in its path with ease. And soon it ran across the head of Ryota's Susanoo, and without even the slightest of effort, the sword easily cut off that head. Now Kuroto used rain will pull to pull out Uchiha Ryota from the broken Susanoo, and smashed him on the other side of the shore. Boom! With a muffled noise, Ryota, who was thrown by Kuroto, smashed violently on the side of the shore. Cough cough. Cough cough. Cough cough. Ryota was coughing violently. At this point it was getting hard for him to breathe. His cells have deteriorated very badly and it is very hard for him to even stay alive for a few more minutes. Staring at Kuroto, who had an indifferent look, as if nothing went beyond his expectation during the entire battle, Ryota chuckled. You are a monster, you know that? And just what kind of ninjutsu do you use? All of them, all of them. Kuroto did not answer Ryota's question, although he still had that indifferent look. He was actually panting for breath. After all, using Silver Will Reincarnation Explosion and Golden Will Reincarnation Explosion simultaneously with such power is also a bit difficult for him, so obviously he was also a bit drained in this battle. After all, he went as far as to use 7 truth-seeking orbs in both the techniques, so obviously there is some exhaustion. Ryota didn't really expect any answer from Kuroto at this point, but he went on to say, you know, I was able to notice that. Kuroto did not care what Ryota wanted to say, so he continued ignoring Ryota's words, and as soon as he recovered his breath, he immediately crouched down and took out the pair of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan from Ryota's eye sockets. Ryota obviously did not resist. He knew that this was inevitable. Moreover, he was unable to stop Kuroto, both because of the other person's strength, his own weakness, and tiredness, but most of all, because of that cursed tag buried in his heart. After losing his eyes, Ryota kept asking, tell me, why did I lose? Was it just because you were too strong? Kuroto put the pair of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan inside a small nutrition tank, deactivated the Tenseigan chakra mode, and then spoke, I have nothing to speak. Even before the battle started I repeatedly told you that you have no chance of winning, yet you wanted to experience the painful defeat, and that's what you are getting. Ryota nodded, then again said, you are right. But that is not the answer to my question. Kuroto sighed and spoke, unfortunately, this is Shinobi World, a world where even the dead are unable to keep the secrets buried, as such I am not going to speak anything that I do not want to. Ryota sighed, maybe you are right. Kuroto looked at the tears mixed with blood coming out of Ryota's hollow eye sockets. He sighed and after groaning a little, Kuroto spoke, although I won't be telling you anything about my powers, what I can tell you is that the strength you displayed in this battle, even with that half-mutilated body of yours, I can most definitely say that your overall strength has far surpassed the level of a Kage. In fact, you have reached the level of a Super Kage, although you are not as strong as Uchiha Madara, and Shodame-sama, you are still one of the strongest shinobi to have lived in the shinobi world. The defensive power of your Susanoo and those golden flames makes you extremely strong, and I can guarantee that very few people in the shinobi world, whether dead or alive, ever reached your level. Unfortunately for you, no one will ever come to know of your strength. So, you are telling me that it's not that I am too weak or powerless, but that you are too strong? With a wry smile, Ryota asked again, can you tell me your purpose for doing all this? With your strength, let alone Konoha, you can control the entire shinobi world, no one will ever be your opponent, so why go through all this trouble? Why make me and my brother go through such a horrible experience? Why do you want Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan? You have no use for those eyes. Why go to such lengths for things that are completely meaningless to you? Hearing Ryota's earnest questions, Kuroto was silent for a while, then said, I promised Shursui that I would not let Uchiha clan fade away. I don't really care if you believe what I am saying is true or not, but part of the reasons I did all this has something to do with saving the Uchiha clan. Ryota was taken aback, and after understanding some things he seemed a little lost. Kuroto said, Uchiha clan's plans of coup d'état are destined to fail. The chief combatants that your clan hopes to rely on during the rebellion are strictly opposed to the idea of coup, be that Shursui or Itachi, and even if by some miracle your clan succeeds in starting the rebellion, it will completely destroy Konoha and the other villages will not let miss such a chance. Thus the entire shinobi continent will be engulfed into the flames of war, causing too much destruction and death, and I am really not interested in such a thing becoming a reality. Ryota said in a deep voice, as long as the entire Uchiha clan is united, nobody in the entire shinobi world will ever be able to harm the Uchiha clan. Maybe, you are right. Kuroto nodded, then said, but the reality is not as you hope. The entire Uchiha clan does not support your cause. There are people who secretly oppose the coup, and the radicals of your clan are pushing them, putting pressure on them that they must support the clan, so inevitably what you people are doing is actually more damage to your clan. Ryota was silent for a while then said, so what do you expect the Uchiha clan should do? Kuroto said, to be honest, I don't know, but I do know that coup is not the way, perhaps a change. Ryota frowned. Change? What kind of change? I don't know, to be honest. I'll figure out these things because I promised Shursui to not let the Uchiha clan be destroyed, and that's what I will do. The reasons for the destruction of the Uchiha clan are many. There is Danzo inside the village, then there is Obito outside, so Kuroto has no perfect method to solve this issue for now, but maybe he will have one in the future. After a long silence, Ryota said with a bitter tone, I hope so. Speaking so, Ryota lifted his hand which held a kunai, and directly pierced his heart, ending his life here. For a few seconds, Kuroto kept his silence, and after noticing that all signs of life disappeared, Kuroto murmured, there is one more thing that I have not told you. Although Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is the highest level of dojutsu that an Uchiha can have with just his Yin chakra, it is still not the end, as there are other higher forms of dojutsu that Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan can evolve into if the right conditions are met. 2 days later, inside a cave in the land of rain. Poof! As the white smoke cleared, the tiger-striped Kasai appeared before Uchiha Shinichi. Looking at the familiar cat that was now wounded and wrapped up in bandages, Shinichi frowned. Hey, how come you got all these injuries? As soon as Shinichi asked, the cat started to cry waterfall tears and said, Yuwa, tiger stripes don't work every time, they were unable to fool the hound dogs. And. Shinichi sighed, alright, first stop wiping away your snot on my clothes, second, you are pretty stupid for trying to fool a hound dog. But, you said that if I were to have tiger markings, I would look very intimidating. I was just joking, buddy, getting some marking doesn't change the fact that you are still a cat. Then what do you think I should do? Firstly, you should give me the scroll sent by him, and as for the second, you should take a holiday to recover. As soon as Shinichi said this, the cat extended his paws and asked, Meow, if you say so, then give me 2,000 ryo for the scroll. Shinichi's eyes widened as soon as the cat asked the money. Why have you raised the price? And how much are you charging from him? Kasai said in the most natural tone, I wanted to settle for 3,000 ryo, but he didn't agree. Finally we reached an agreement at 2,000 ryo. Here I am doing the work while injured, so obviously the fees will be doubled. Meow. If I did not know any better, I would have certainly thought that all your injuries are your new rip-off schemes, greedy cat. As soon as Shinichi said this, all the hair on the cat stood up and sweat started to come out. Ahahaha, what are you talking about? I am surprised that you know such humor. Anyway, give me the bills fast, I have to go. My wounds have suddenly started to ache. Shinichi narrowed his eyes as soon as he saw the sudden change in the behavior of the cat. The 2,000 ryo bills he had in his hands were stopped midway. But the greedy cat realized that Shinichi seems to have noticed something and suddenly snatched the 2 bills, threw the scroll towards Shinichi, and disappeared into a cloud of smoke. Sigh, this foo **ing greedy cat, muttered Shinichi helplessly. Shinichi shook his head and unlocked the scroll with the specific hand seals pre-selected by them, and after he unfolded the scroll sent to him by the Kuroto, and just as he read the contents of the scroll, Shinichi can't help but frown. Why in the hell is he asking for this? The scroll sent by Kuroto recorded only one sentence, go to the border of Land of Fire and Land of Rain, meet the person sent by me and take that person to the ritual ceremony hosted by Hirako. Is he out of his mind? Why in the hell would he want such a thing? Has he finally gone insane? Or does he think that the ritual ceremony will be a firework show that anyone can watch if they want to? No matter how much he thinks, Shinichi can't understand why Kuroto would order such a thing. This is because Akatsuki is an organization that even he as a member of the organization, has to be very vigilant about, and Kuroto should know this better than him, so why in the hell would he suddenly ask for such a thing? As far as Shinichi knows, Kuroto is the kind of person who has always preferred to work in secrecy, so then why this sudden outrageous move which can destroy everything they have done to infiltrate Akatsuki? Is that ritual so important? No matter what Shinichi thought about this absurd order, Shinichi still decided to put his trust in Kuroto and decided to go to the location marked in the map he received with the scroll. Shinichi would obviously measure out if the person sent by Kuroto is up to the task, and then decide if he will bring him to the ritual site, but if the person is not up to the task, then Shinichi would obviously not bring an incompetent person with him to a site that would be filled with the main Akatsuki members. 3 days later. With intervals of travel and rest for the past 3 days, Shinichi finally arrived at the location marked in the map sent by Kuroto. This is the border of Land of Fire and Land of Rain. When one looks around, the place is filled with lush green vegetation and dense forests along with the continuous rain from the dark rain clouds. As soon as he traveled a little more, the rain stopped and the sky cleared. Shinichi took off his rain gear, which consisted of a raincoat and the bamboo hat, while slandering inwardly, "The land of rain is really an unsuitable place for people to live comfortably." Shinichi has always felt that the gloomy rain of the land of rain is really depressing. It is as if the country itself is crying for the people of the land of rain, and Shinichi really hates staying in the land of rain. While Shinichi was getting over his depressed mood, he suddenly looked towards the distance and noticed a figure of a person slowly walking towards him. A while later, the figure finally stood opposite Shinichi. Looking at the person standing before him, Shinichi had a thoughtful look. The other party is a girl. Her age is around 15 to 16 years old from what Shinichi can judge, but what highlights about her is her unusually beautiful yet cold appearance, indifferently noble temperament, and distinguished aura. By looks, she is a fair-skinned girl with sharp eyes, long flowing black hair that reached down to her lower back, and were currently tied in a ponytail. She wore a short white kimono with long sleeve. The white kimono had black flower prints with a black obi tied over, coupled with black full-length stockings, white bandages wrapped from the ankle up to the knees, a pair of black shinobi sandals, and a long katana strapped around her waist. Shinichi was sure that he has never seen her in his life, but he didn't know why he faintly felt that the kunoichi standing in front of him was familiar, as if he had known her a long time ago. Weird, why do I feel that I know who she is when this is clearly the first time I am seeing her? Shinichi stopped thinking and questioned, "So, who are you and what are you doing here?" The kunoichi replied calmly, "I am the person you are supposed to take to the place of the ritual." Shinichi said coldly, "And why should I trust you?" The kunoichi was not at all affected by Shinichi's cold tone, and calmly replied, "You don't need to trust me, all you need to do is to follow Kuroto-sama's instruction." The fact that the other party mentioned Hyuga Kuroto's name reduced Shinichi's suspicions, and he immediately asked, "And what is your name? And why does he want you to be present during the Hirokos ritual?" "My name. I am Uchiha Tsukihai." After a pause, Tsukihai continued, "As for why Kuroto-sama wanted me to observe Hirokos ritual ceremony, it is because he is very interested in that experiment." Uchiha Tsukihai. Shinichi didn't seem to hear Tsukihai's next words. As soon as he heard the name, Uchiha Tsukihai, Shinichi instantly activated his Sharingan and said coldly, "Care to repeat your name again?" "Uchiha Tsukihai." Tsukihai stated as a matter of fact. "Are you sure you want to lie to me? I am also an Uchiha, and the last time I checked, I don't seem to know you, so who are you?" Shinichi said coldly as he suddenly raised his hand and held Tsukihai by the neck, raising her above the ground, and spoke, "I suggest that you use the next 10 seconds very carefully, because if I am not satisfied with what you have to say in your defense, then you will be dead." The kunoichi who was held by the neck did not panic as expected, nor did she speak anything in her defense, and just when Shinichi was about to put strength in his arm to break off her neck, her onyx black pupils changed into scarlet ones with 3 tomo spinning in them. Looking at the girl's eyes that were genuine Sharingan, Shinichi's face had an unexpected surprised look. After he had joined Akatsuki, Uchiha Madara once mentioned many secrets of Sharingan to him, including the possibility of transplantation of Sharingan. From a medical point of view, the transplantation of Sharingan is not an impossibility. And Hitaki Kakashi's transplanted Sharingan that he got as a gift from the dead Uchiha Obito is one such example that even a fledgling medical nin no era Rin was capable of doing, even alone in the harsh battlefield without any proper tools. But successful transplantation is not the end of it, because obtaining a Sharingan might even be easier compared to being able to use that Sharingan. Without the blood of the Uchiha clan, even if someone has transplanted Sharingan, he will never be able to showcase the true potential of Sharingan, and instead of becoming a powerful boost, the Sharingan will, in fact, become a major restriction on the user, which will greatly hamper the growth of the bearer and also restrict the extent of what he is truly capable of. Hitaki Kakashi is again the best example. However, the kunoichi in front of him doesn't seem to be burdened by the Sharingan in the slightest, which means that she is truly a descendant of the Uchiha clan. Understanding this, Shinichi loosened his grip but still did not release her, and asked, "Okay, I agree that you are an Uchiha, but if you are one, then why have I never seen you in the clan? From your appearance and age, you are probably a little older than Uchiha Shisui, and yet I have never seen you. Moreover, you have the 3 tomo Sharingan, you cannot be an unknown." Tsukihai said, "Since Kuroto-sama sent me here, so he obviously trusts my background, so I don't believe that there is any need for you to doubt my identity. Besides, there is a rule of the organization that I believe you should have been familiar with. Only the leader is allowed to know the identity and background of all the members. The members need not care, question, or try to find things unrelated to them. This is because..." Because the less you know, the lesser you will worry, the less you know, the lesser danger you will be in, the less you know, the lesser the chances of your identity being revealed, the less you know, the lesser you will reveal when caught by the enemy. Shinichi repeated with Tsukihai. With this, Shinichi let go of Uchiha Tsukihai. Alright, I suppose that you are right. The Kunoichi, Uchiha Tsukihai, is obviously Hyuga Kuroto, controlling the fire nature clone using the Tenseigan soul descend. Kuroto really couldn't let go of the opportunity to observe Hiriko's attempt to absorb various Kekii Genkai. After all, this matter is related to Kuroto's big plan to achieve Kekii Mora in the future. As such, he needs as much knowledge and test results on the working of Chimera technique. Because Kuroto doesn't believe that he will get a second chance. For this reason, he took the risk of using this fire nature clone, and tried to get to the site of the ritual with the help of Shinichi. Shinichi groaned for a while, then suddenly his figure disappeared. At the very same moment, 8 shuriken were shot towards Uchiha Tsukihai. Whyish. 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 Uchiha Tsukihai instantly drew out the long katana sheathed at her waist, injected her chakra into the katana, and lightly swung it with flowing graceful movements, and instantly resheathed the katana. Ding. 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 A moment later, all of the shurikens coming towards her were cut into 2 pieces and fell on the ground. At this time, Shinichi suddenly appeared before Tsukihai and shouted, "Fire release, fireball jutsu." Uchiha Tsukihai also printed the hand seals and shouted, "Fire release, fireball jutsu." Boom. 2 huge fireballs, each spouted out of Shinichi and Tsukihai, collided together, setting off a deafening roar and a loud explosion, setting the whole forest ablaze. Amidst the smoke and dust, Shinichi's figure flashed and appeared in front of Tsukihai. His sword was in his hands, and a fight of kenjutsu began between the 2 Uchiha shinobi. Shinichi didn't seem to be using all his strength, and Tsukihai seemed to be very calm during the entire battle. Understanding that he wouldn't be able to take advantage of using kenjutsu, Shinichi's figure again disappeared, and then several kunai tied with explosive tag cut through the cover of smoke and directly shot towards Tsukihai. Uchiha Tsukihai's face remained unchanged, and the 3 tomos spinning in her Sharingan were spinning rapidly, and instantly she took out the katana and swung it fiercely, sending waves of air pressure along the trajectory. The air pressure waves cut through the kunai, yet they did not cut the kunai, but Tsukihai seemed to be satisfied with this, and instantly her figure disappeared from her position. Tuck. 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 As Tsukihai disappeared from her position, kunai tied with explosive tags were nailed at the tree trunk behind her. However, the expected explosion did not occur because without any exception all of the explosive tags were cut into 2 pieces. Whyish. 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 At this moment, another onslaught of shuriken arrived towards the new position Tsukihai was at, and Tsukihai, who had already sheathed the katana, did not draw it out this time but put her hand inside her kimono sleeves, and the next moment she threw out 8 shurikens, 4 from each of her hand. And the next moment a clash of Uchiha Shuriken Jutsu started between Uchiha Shinichi and Uchiha Tsukihai. Amidst the Shuriken Jutsu battle, while the shurikens were flying off everywhere, hitting each other, changing their trajectories, and then again hitting the other shuriken, deflecting them, and so on. Shinichi suddenly looked at Tsukihai's eyes. The moment line of sight of the 2 matched, Tsukihai felt an instantaneous sluggishness but soon lost effect. At this time, the Shuriken Jutsu battle also came to an end, and Tsukihai had already redrawn her katana. But Shinichi did not attack anymore and instead stood in silence, then said, "Well, that wasn't bad." Seeing that Tsukihai still had her katana drawn out, he felt that she might be angry for the unexpected attack, so he went on to explain, "Hey, calm down, alright. The members of Akatsuki are without exception all monsters. If you don't have any strength to even be able to protect yourself, even I won't be able to protect you, assuming the worst case scenario, so I needed to judge whether you have what it takes to be present there." Tsukihai nodded as she resheathed the katana, indicating that she did not mind. She was obviously very clear about Shinichi's purpose for doing this. Ordinary people can't get involved with Akatsuki, unless one has the appropriate strength. It is best to stay away from Akatsuki, so this assessment by Shinichi was very reasonable. "Let's go. I have been away from Amigakure for a few days already. If I stay away for too long, there are chances that they will start to get suspicious," Shinichi said while putting on the bamboo hat and his raincoat as he started walking in the direction of the site of the ritual. Tsukihai nodded without speaking any nonsense and walked next to him after putting on the bamboo hat and raincoat offered to her by Shinichi. While on their way, Shinichi questioned, "He must have informed you on the basic details of Akatsuki's internal situations, right?" Tsukihai nodded, "Yes, I have a rough understanding of the members of the Akatsuki organization." Shinichi nodded and spoke after a bit of deliberation, "I can't guarantee about the others, but you don't need to worry about my partner, Biwa Juzo, so long as you don't offend him, he won't be nosy about your matters. But you have to pay special attention to people like Sasori, Kakuzu, and Hirako. They are all crazier than the others, and since you are not a so-called formal member of the organization, there is a possibility that they will target you, one for your body, other for your heart, and the last for taking what you have." Hearing how Shinichi said the last sentence, Tsukihai couldn't help but blush and think, what are they, a bunch of perverts? Shinichi didn't seem to have noticed Tsukihai's thoughts and continued, "Then there is also that masked man, who claims to be Uchiha Madara. He is the most dangerous in the entire organization. He is the one you will have to be most careful against." Pausing here, Shinichi said with a solemn expression, "If he attacks you, then even I don't have the confidence to be able to save you." Tsukihai glanced at Shinichi and said, "So that masked man who claims himself to be Uchiha Madara doesn't show up often in the organization, right?" Shinichi was surprised. "I am rather surprised that you know this. Did he tell you this too?" "Well, doesn't matter, I guess. And you are right, he does not show up in front of other members of the organization. As far as I know, except for Pain, Konan, Zetsu, and me, nobody else is aware of his existence in the Akatsuki." Tsukihai said, "By the way, you can just tell them that I am your spy in Konoha if you say, then I don't think that anyone will choose to attack me, don't you think?" "That is a good idea, I suppose." Shinichi nodded and asked with a puzzled expression, "But I am unable to figure out just why is he interested in Hirako's ritual. With his strength, why does he care about such crappy things?" Even if defected, Shinichi is still an Uchiha by genes, and obviously disdains for such pathetic means that Hirako is using. In Shinichi's opinion, a shinobi born with Kekkai Genkai is inherently superior to someone not born with a Kekkai Genkai, and this bloody ritual that Hirako is going to do disgusts Shinichi very much because Shinichi believes that no matter how much Hirako tries, he would never be able to catch up or surpass those he is stealing these Kekkai Genkai from. Tsukihai had nothing to explain, this matter is about perception, and she is not interested in changing Shinichi's beliefs, so she just said, "Kuroto-sama has his own plans, and I am only responsible for observing and reporting to him. As for other things, neither do I care about them, nor do I need to know, and the same goes with you too." Sigh, "I suppose that's true." Shinichi sighed and did not speak about it anymore. And the journey continued. Soon the two entered into the territory of the Land of Rain. By now the sky was already covered with gloomy clouds, and a light drizzle started to fall. The intensity of raindrops falling kept increasing as the two went deeper into the Land of Rain. A few days later, both of them entered Amigakure, and Shinichi led Tsukihai to the recently built temporary base of Akatsuki. As soon as the two entered the temporary base, they met a member of the Akatsuki organization wearing a traditional Akatsuki high-neck turtle black cloak with red cloud prints. Tsukihai recognized this person. He was Shino, the mysterious doctor and the secret leader of Sky Ninjas. But Tsukihai's gaze did not stay on Shino for any longer than a second and landed on the woman walking behind Shino. The woman was very beautiful with a pair of breathtaking eyes. Seeing that woman, Tsukihai can't help but think, why do I feel familiar with this woman? Have I seen her before? Tsukihai felt that she knows who this woman is but can't remember, where has she seen this woman? And while Tsukihai was looking at the woman behind Shino, the woman standing behind Shino was also looking at Uchiha Shinichi and Tsukihai with interest, her eyes gleaming with an indescribable look. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kaishin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my Patreon. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Ben Phillips, Yamatancho, Yuki, Search 1301.
If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be here until next time.